The unexpected advocate. The grand chamber of the galactic conclave was designed to intimidate. Its sweeping crystalline dome stretched 100 meters above the assembly floor, refracting light in patterns that subtly disoriented most species. The chamber's acoustics were precisely calibrated to make every sound, every cough, every whisper, every nervous shuffle audible to the magistrates who sat on their elevated platform of polished black stone. Dr. Elena Rice felt that intimidation working on her now as she stood before the 7 magistrates. The central figure, Magistrate Prime Thasiel, loomed over the proceedings. His species, the Draconid, were known for their imposing stature, 3 meters tall with iridescent scales that shifted colors with their moods. Currently, Thasiel's scales rippled with deep purple and crimson, colors of displeasure and judgment. The conclave finds the evidence presented by the Vexari Confederation to be compelling. Thasiel's voice resonated through the chamber. The human terraforming operation on Kepler 452 bits appears to have violated the Mutual Development Treaty of the 5th Galactic Cycle. Elena's stomach tightened. The Vexari delegation, seated to her right, rustled their feathery appendages in obvious satisfaction. If the ruling went against humanity, the newly established colony on Kepler 452 bits, humanity's most promising extraterrestrial settlement, would be surrendered to Vexari control. 20,000 human colonists would be displaced, and humanity's already precarious standing in the galactic community would be further diminished. Magistrate Prime, Elena began, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. The human delegation requests additional time to present evidence contradicting the Vexari claims. Our analysis shows that the planetary alteration procedures were well within treaty parameters. Your previous evidence was found insufficient. Thasiel replied, his scales darkening. The conclave has deliberated. Unless you have new evidence not previously disclosed, our ruling stands. Elena frantically searched her mind for something. Anything that might sway the conclave. But she knew the truth. The diplomatic team had exhausted every legal argument, every scientific explanation, every appeal to reason. They had nothing left. From the back of the human delegation section, a small voice suddenly piped up. But that's not true. Elena froze. She knew that voice. Turning slowly, she saw her 9-year-old daughter, Mira, standing on her seat, pointing an accusatory finger at the Vexari delegation. Mira, sit down, Elena hissed, mortified. Her daughter was supposed to be in the diplomatic quarters with a childminder. How she had managed to sneak into the most secure chamber in the galaxy was a question for later. But Mira wasn't listening. They're lying, she declared, her voice ringing clear through the perfect acoustics of the grand chamber. I saw them. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Vexari delegation's leader, Ambassador Zivrak, rose to his full height, his feathers bristling with indignation. This is an outrage, Zivrak sputtered. A human child interrupting sacred proceedings. This mockery of protocol. Silence. Thasiel's command cut through the chaos. His scales had shifted to a deep, midnight blue, a color Elena had never seen before. The entire chamber went still. Thasiel's gaze fixed on Mira, who showed no sign of intimidation. Child, he said, his voice softer but no less powerful, you claim the Vexari delegation is presenting false information. Yes, sir, Mira replied firmly. I was playing hide-and-seek in the diplomatic wing yesterday, and I hid in the air duct outside the Vexari meeting room. Elena wanted to sink through the floor. Her daughter had been eavesdropping on a foreign delegation, a diplomatic incident in itself. And what did you hear, child? Thasiel asked, leaning forward slightly. They were laughing about how they'd tricked everyone, Mira said, her face serious. The tall one with the red crest said they'd planted false sensor readings on Kepler 452 bits to make it look like humans had changed the atmosphere more than they actually did. He said something about manipulating the baseline data and how no one would check the original atmospheric records. The chamber went deadly quiet. Elena stared at her daughter in disbelief. If what Mira was saying was true, Ambassador Zivrek's feathers flattened against his body, a vexary sign of distress. "This is absurd," he declared, but his voice wavered. "The testimony of a human child is worthless." Thaziel raised a hand, and the scales around his eyes shifted to a pale silver, the color of curiosity. "Interesting," he murmured. Then, louder, "The child has invoked, perhaps unwittingly, the Voice of Truth protocol." Elena gasped. The Voice of Truth protocol was an ancient and rarely used provision in conclave law, dating back to the earliest days of the galactic government. It held that any being, regardless of status, who directly challenged the veracity of evidence before the conclave had the right to be heard, and to present counter-evidence. "But Magistrate Prime," protested one of the other magistrates, a gelatinous being named Ulox, "the protocol has not been invoked in 17 cycles." "Nevertheless, it stands," Thaziel replied. "The child has made a specific accusation involving evidence tampering. We must investigate." "This is highly irregular," Ambassador Zivrek interjected, his composure clearly rattled. "The child could not possibly." "The Vexari delegation seems unusually concerned about the testimony of a child they claim is worthless," observed Thaziel, his scales now rippling with gold flecks. Amusement. Elena finally found her voice. "Magistrate Prime, while I apologize for the interruption, my daughter's claims should be investigated. If the Vexari have indeed manipulated the atmospheric data, we will verify," Thaziel declared. "The Conclave's scientific division will examine the original atmospheric readings from Kepler 452 bits and compare them to the evidence presented by the Vexari." Ambassador Zivrek's feathers drooped, a sign of defeat or extreme anxiety. "Further," Thaziel continued, his voice taking on a formal tone that made Elena's skin prickle, "under the full provisions of the Voice of Truth protocol, the child who raised the objection must participate in the subsequent proceedings as a recognized voice." Elena's jaw dropped. "You mean?" "Yes, Dr. Reyes. According to our oldest laws, your daughter is now an official representative in this matter. The Voice of Truth protocol states that the one who speaks truth when others will not becomes a guardian of truth until the matter is resolved." Mira's eyes widened with excitement. "I get to be part of the space court?" she asked. "The Galactic Conclave," Thaziel corrected, but his scales flickered with that gold amusement again. "And yes, young human, you are now bound to these proceedings." Elena felt the room spin slightly. Her 9-year-old daughter had just become an official diplomatic representative in the most important case humanity had ever faced in the Galactic Conclave. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. The Conclave's scientific division began an emergency examination of Kepler 452 bits' original atmospheric composition. Elena tried to prepare Mira for what might come next, though in truth, she had no idea what the Voice of Truth protocol would entail. "Am I in trouble, Mom?" Mira asked as they sat in a small antechamber, waiting for the scientist's verdict. Elena sighed. "No, sweetheart. But what you did was very risky. Diplomatic meetings are private for a reason." "But they were lying," Mira said simply. "Dad always says that the truth matters more than rules sometimes." Elena felt a pang at the mention of her late husband, Marco. He had been a diplomat too, and his straightforward approach to galactic politics had often gotten him into trouble, but had also earned him respect. Mira had inherited his moral clarity, it seemed. A soft chime indicated someone at the door. It slid open to reveal Magistrate Prime Thaziel, who had to duck his massive head to enter the human-sized room. "The scientific division has completed its preliminary analysis," he announced without preamble. "The original atmospheric composition of Kepler 452 bits differs significantly from the baseline data presented by the Vexari. The evidence suggests deliberate manipulation." Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Then the human terraforming operations were within treaty limits." "That appears to be the case," Thaziel confirmed. However, this creates a more complex situation. The Vexari Confederation has attempted to deceive the Conclave, a serious offense. And your daughter, Dr. Reyes, has activated one of our most ancient protocols. He turned his gaze to Mira, who looked tiny beside the towering Draconid. Young Guardian, the Voice of Truth protocol entitles you to participate in determining the resolution of this matter. The conclave reconvenes in 1 hour. You will be expected to attend. After Thaziel departed, Elena knelt before her daughter. Mira, listen to me. This is serious. The conclave might ask you questions or even ask for your opinion on what should happen next. I need you to be careful about what you say. Mira nodded solemnly. I'll be careful, Mom. But I'll also be honest. Looking into her daughter's determined eyes, Elena realized that was exactly what she feared. The diplomatic revolution. The Grand Chamber had transformed in the hour since they'd left. Additional seating had been installed for an unprecedented number of observers. Representatives from at least 30 different galactic species crowded the viewing galleries. News of the Voice of Truth protocol being invoked had spread rapidly through the diplomatic community. As Elena and Mira entered, a hush fell over the assembly. The 7 magistrates were already seated, with Thaziel at the center. To the left, the Vexari delegation looked significantly diminished. Their normally proud postures slumped, their colorful feathers dulled with stress. Thaziel gestured to 2 seats positioned prominently before the magistrate's platform. Dr. Rice, young guardian, please be seated. Elena guided Mira to the chairs, acutely aware of thousands of alien eyes upon them. She had spent her entire diplomatic career trying to avoid being the center of attention like this. The conclave has verified the young guardian's claims, Thaziel announced to the assembly. The Vexari Confederation presented falsified evidence regarding the atmospheric conditions of Kepler 452 bits. The human terraforming operations were, in fact, within treaty parameters. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vexari ambassador Zivrik seemed to shrink further into himself. According to conclave law, Thaziel continued, the standard penalty for presenting false evidence is immediate revocation of all contested claims and a 3-cycle suspension from conclave participation. Elena relaxed slightly. The standard penalty would secure humanity's position on Kepler 452 bits and remove the Vexari as a political threat for the next 3 galactic cycles, approximately 15 Earth years. However, Thaziel's voice took on a formal tone. The Voice of Truth protocol alters the standard procedure. The young guardian must be consulted on the resolution. Elena tensed again. This was what she'd feared. Mira, with her 9-year-old sense of justice, being asked to determine interstellar policy. Thaziel turned his attention to Mira. Young guardian, you have uncovered a deception that might have resulted in the displacement of 20,000 of your kind. The standard penalties would secure your people's claim to Kepler 452 bits and temporarily reduce Vexari influence in galactic matters. Do you find this resolution satisfactory? The chamber went completely silent. Mira looked thoughtful, her small brow furrowed in concentration. May I ask a question first? She asked, her voice clear in the perfect acoustics. Thaziel inclined his head. You may. Why did the Vexari want Kepler 452 bits so badly in the first place? The question was so direct, so simple, and yet Elena realized it was something none of the human diplomats had thought to ask directly during the proceedings. Ambassador Zivrak looked up, surprised at being addressed. After a moment's hesitation, he answered, Kepler 452 bits contains the largest known deposit of crystalline thorium in the sector. Our civilization uses it for our primary energy production. Mira nodded. And humans are using it for what? Elena leaned forward. Primarily agricultural development. The planet's soil composition is ideal for growing certain earth crops. So, Mira said slowly, thinking aloud, the Vexari need the crystals for power, and humans need the dirt for food. Several members of the assembly chuckled at this simplification, but Thesiel silenced them with a look. "Yes, that is essentially correct," he confirmed. Mira looked up at the imposing magistrate. "Then I don't think the standard penalty is right. It doesn't solve the real problem." Elena felt her stomach drop. What was Mira doing? "Explain, young guardian," Thesiel prompted. "Well," Mira began, "the Vexari lied because they really need those crystals. Taking away their voice in the conclave for 3 cycles doesn't get them the crystals, and it doesn't make them less desperate. It just makes them angry and more likely to do something else bad later." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Mira continued, undaunted. "Humans need the soil, not the crystals. The Vexari need the crystals, not the soil. Instead of fighting over who gets the whole planet, couldn't humans mine the crystals and send them to the Vexari, while humans use the soil for farms?" The simplicity of the solution stunned the assembly into silence. Elena stared at her daughter in amazement. The diplomatic team had been so focused on the legal battle for exclusive control that they'd never considered a resource-sharing arrangement. Ambassador Zivrek's feathers raised slightly, a sign of interest. "The child suggests a cooperative arrangement. A trade agreement," Elena clarified, her mind racing with the possibilities. "Humanity could extract the crystalline thorium as part of our terraforming operations and establish a fair exchange with the Vexari Confederation." Thesiel's scales shifted to a deep emerald green, a color Elena had never seen him display before. "Interesting. The young guardian proposes a resolution based not on punishment, but on addressing the underlying cause of the conflict. But there must still be consequences for their deception," argued Magistrate Ulox, their gelatinous form pulsing with agitation. Mira nodded. "Oh, I agree. They should have to say sorry formally, and maybe pay for the scientists' time that they wasted with fake data. And they should have to send some of their people to live with humans on the planet to make sure everyone follows the new agreement." Elena nearly choked. Her daughter had just proposed a cultural exchange program, something humanity had been unsuccessfully lobbying for since joining the conclave. "Embedded observers," Thesiel mused. "An elegant solution that serves both as consequence and preventative measure." Ambassador Zivrek hesitantly rose. "The Vexari Confederation would find these terms acceptable, more than acceptable. We would be willing to share technical expertise in crystal extraction to ensure maximum efficiency and minimal environmental impact." The chamber buzzed with conversation now. Elena realized that something unprecedented was happening. A complete restructuring of a planetary dispute resolution, initiated by a child's simple question, "Why can't we share?" Thesiel raised his hands for silence. "The conclave will need to formalize these arrangements, but I find the young guardian's wisdom compelling. Dr. Reyes, would humanity be amenable to a cooperative development arrangement on Kepler 452 bits?" Elena stood. "Humanity would be honored to pioneer this new approach to shared planetary development, Magistrate Prime." "Then let it be so," Thesiel declared. "The voice of truth has spoken and found wisdom beyond punishment. Let this case be recorded in the conclave archives as the beginning of the cooperative development doctrine." As the formal proceedings concluded, delegates from various species approached Elena and Mira, expressing interest in similar arrangements on other contested worlds. The Galactic Conclave, an institution notorious for its rigid adherence to precedent, had been fundamentally changed by a child's perspective. Later, as they returned to their quarters, Elena looked at her daughter with newfound respect. "Mira, do you understand what you did today?" Mira shrugged. "I just said what made sense. Dad always told me that most grown-ups overthink things and forget to look for the simple answer." Elena smiled, feeling a bittersweet pang at the mention of Marco again. "Your father would be incredibly proud of you today." "Will I get to keep being the guardian of truth?" Mira asked hopefully. Elena laughed. "I think one diplomatic revolution is enough for now, but something tells me you might have a future in galactic politics." 6 months later, Elena stood with Mira on a hilltop overlooking the first joint human-Vexari settlement on Kepler 452 bits. Human agricultural domes stretched across the valley, while Vexari crystal extraction facilities operated with surprising delicacy along the ridgelines. Most remarkably, a central community hub had been constructed where both species could interact, trade, and learn from each other. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the Kepler Compromise. 7 other disputed worlds had already adopted similar cooperative development models. The Galactic Conclave had established a new division dedicated to resource-sharing solutions, and remarkably, had invited Earth to provide leadership for the initiative. Ambassador Reyes, called a voice behind them. Elena turned to see a young diplomatic aide approaching. She was still getting used to her new title. The Magistrate Prime's ship has entered orbit. He'll be landing for the dedication ceremony within the hour. Thank you, Elena replied. We'll be ready. As the aide departed, Mira looked up at her mother. Mom, do you think Magistrate Thaziel will remember me? Elena smiled. Considering he specifically requested you be present for the ceremony, and he's bringing a special conclave commendation for the guardian who changed the galaxy, I think it's safe to say he remembers you. Mira grinned. Cool. I have some ideas about the Orion sector dispute I want to tell him about. Elena laughed and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. One galactic crisis at a time, sweetheart. One at a time. In the distance, a Vexari child and a human child raced each other through a field of earth wheat growing alongside Vexari crystalline flowers, a small but powerful symbol of what was possible when ancient institutions listened to the wisdom of a child who simply asked, "Why can't we share?"